Hello and welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Hilliard, and I'm joined once again by William Gallagher. Our sponsors this week are Oracle and NordLayer. If you pay for Apple Insider Plus, you don't hear about sponsors. You're going to be hearing about our iOS and iPadOS 26 wish list. So stay tuned after the show. We're going to get into that. But today, we're going to be spending some time on WWDC itself, Apple and developers and developer relations, and talk a little bit more about what's going on in the world. Busy news week, but also a little bit light in other ways. William, how you doing?
Well, I'm mostly okay, but I'm also incredibly curious. Okay, can I just go straight in with this? Because I remember last week I was saying that you're the guy I always think of for iPad questions and Apple Vision Pro questions. But right now, I want to plug in the fact that basically you're American. So maybe you can answer something that's a mystery to me over here. Are you up for a little interrogation now, or do you want me to just, tease it on a little bit? Keep you waiting.
Well, maybe we'll get into that in a second. But first, I want to point out as we record, it is June 5th, which is the release day of the Nintendo Switch 2. And lo and behold, I have one. I went yesterday. I went to GameStop. I waited in line for 2 hours, pre-purchased it at 3 p.m., then went back to GameStop, waited in line for about 45 minutes, and then picked it up. So, yeah, I spent 3 hours of my day purchasing a Nintendo Switch yesterday.
No wonder you don't care about questions from England. You're into the game. In fact, actually, are you playing it now? Come on, admit it. Are you?
If I could have a way to plug it into the Vision Pro, which I'm sure there's several ways, I would probably have it in here right now, playing Mario Kart World.
But hang on, you've had it for what, 3 hours, and you haven't figured out a way to connect it to me? I mean, okay. You've connected everything to everything.
I would have to get my, there's the Stream Deck thing, that from Elgato, and then you plug it into your Mac, and then you run an app that mirrors it into it's a whole thing.
Sorry, you can't just, hold it. You need a Mac to do this. Yet again. iPad boy realizes the Mac is where it's at. Okay, there you go. I'm happy now. I forget the mystery. I'm done. Okay.
Of course. No, I think actually there is a way to run it from iPad, because iPad also has the visual mirroring thing, the HDMI capture card system that you can do, which is actually where my HDMI capture card is hooked right now. So I could probably use an app to stream it to the Vision Pro. It might be a little clunky, but something to try. This thing's cool. I know it's not Apple related, but I am probably going to try and find ways to incorporate it into some of our writing. I previously wrote a story about how to use iPad as a portable Nintendo Switch monitor, and I definitely can't wait to try that out now, because this is a 4K console with HDR support, so I'm curious how this might translate to that setup and getting my iPad Switch 2 ready. So something to look forward to in the future, I guess.
Cool. Okay. It's funny how I'm not interested in games, but I'm interested in the kind of Rube Goldberg. Is it Rube? It's not Rube Goldberg. It's Rube Goldberg. Contraptions. Rube. The rudimentary pulley systems you create to link all these things together. I enjoy that for some reason.
It's part of being an iPad user. If you're not basically making your breakfast like in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, did they do that gag in Back to the Future as well, where it's just a bunch of levers and the dog food's just piling up?
Oh yes, and the can of food opening and the mess on the floor. Yes,
that takes me back. That's what it's like being an iPad user most of the time. You're just chaining a bunch of things together, and it will work. It just requires a lot of manufacturing skills. So, William, you had a question for me.
Yeah, please. I realize this genuinely must be a non-American thing, so I'm sorry for everybody who already knows the answer, but it's this thing about macOS being called macOS Tahoe. Am I pronouncing that right? Because I only ever read the name Tahoe.
It's Tahoe. It is a region, I guess, that borders California and Nevada, if I'm remembering correctly. It's also a Chevrolet truck. You can currently buy a Chevy. Maybe it will run macOS 26. I'm not sure yet. Okay. But yes, the rumored name seems to be Tahoe. It was one of the registered trademarks that Apple has. There is a list of registered trademarks. there's still things like Diablo and Redwood, and macOS Weed is also a registered trademark because they keep using that gag. So
right, doesn't get old, that one. But this is my question. Okay, so here we have the rumor of this is going to be the new name, and we hear it. I don't know if we're hearing it from lots of different places or people are just repeating it, but every time I see a reference to it, people go, well, of course, because that means it's this massive redesign, this visual redesign of macOS. What else would they name it? And it looks very pretty, the area, and I've heard of it, but I don't understand why it's any prettier than Yosemite or something that we've done before. What is special about Lake Tahoe that makes everybody go, we saw that one coming?
I think, there's no actual connection, but if you wanted to dig, I think this is a reference to the fact that in Godfather Part 2, when they kill the guy and they say he's sleeping with the fishes, right? That's that scene. It takes place at Lake Tahoe. Maybe it's a reference to the fact that they're killing macOS and it's going to be reborn from the ashes and we're going to have a whole new design, right? There you go.
Yeah, no, you got to want that to make that one. but okay. All right.
I mean, it is a beautiful place. I'm sure we'll get some excellent video screensavers from it. It always is curious to me. I know this tradition can never die because it's such a good tradition. I like the place names, but I always wonder. People are like, "Oh, what if iOS was named after atomic particles or something?" And it's just like, do you really want different noun names for every operating system? Because it's already hard enough to keep track of. But that's why we're getting iOS 26, macOS 26. We got into that last week, but I'm getting more used to it now as I write about it. So,
my concern was we might lose the names because it's been quite a long time that we've had them, and slightly longer than we had cat names before. Does Apple get bored after a dozen years? But if and what a strange construction of sentences. If the rumours are correct, then I'm actually relieved that the expectation that there will be a name, even if it isn't right yet.
There's a lot of places in California. There's also a lot of things Apple could name it after. I mean, we could go to the solar system next. Who knows?
They could name it after me. I've said this so often. macOS William Gallagher. That would, because then, you could say there are bugs in Gallagher, or Gallagher has crashed, and all this stuff. And wouldn't that be seconds of fun right there for everybody?
But then you'll never know if you're talking about the man or the machine.
Oh, no, you see, plausible deniability. Yeah, it gets better and better.
So Monday is Apple's start to the Worldwide Developer Conference. It's funny how it is technically still a week-long conference, but the other 4 days are pretty much online only at this point. They have an in-person event on Monday. There might be kind of they have this developers building there. I forget. It's like I forget the name of it. It's like a developer's headquarters type thing. I think they hold in-person meetings there on day 2, but those are very exclusive because it's a very small campus. They can't have everyone just go. It's pretty much all online sessions from that point on, and everyone pretty much just flies to California for the day. Other conferences are going on during the week, and there's always a lot of chatter going around those. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing from a lot of developers talking about their reactions to WWDC. So it's going to be a very busy week for us. We're going to be diving through all of the news because, as you know, it's only about an hour and a half, maybe 2-hour video, depending on what they want to announce. What's the longest WWDC, I wonder?
Oh, I don't know. I'm actually wondering about the length there because you're right that this all year long we've been waiting for this, and all the way along it seemed like it's been it's going to be a packed thing because there's so much to say about every operating system. But then in the last few days we're hearing, hang on, it's going to be lighter than expected, and I'm wondering whether Apple has started seeding that little doubt somewhere in order to just seed it down. It's actually going to be 20 minutes off. And then having a cuppa in Apple Park County. That could
maybe
be
they'll just maybe they've just decided they're going to play like a series of 5 trailers that are 3 minutes long that are basically a trailer for each operating system, and then they're just going to call it a day. No, We'll get into that in a second because that is one of the rumors that it's lighter and the Apple Intelligence won't even show up. And look, I don't buy it. I think we get a rumor about this every year. It's always Mark Gurman. It's always a week before WWDC. We have the same conversation, and then Apple comes out and does what they're going to do. I don't know if that's just to drum up anticipation, to do a little head fake, but it's every year. Maybe this is the year that it's lighter or whatever. And then everyone's like, ooh, we're getting a Snow Leopard year. It's like Snow Leopard was busy too. I don't know why that's still a reference, but it's not very accurate. Anyway, I guess it's because at Snow Leopard, they came out on stage and said, our features are the bug fixes or whatever, right? Like that whole deal. But there was still a lot of features in Snow Leopard. So I'm sure this will be a good WWDC. I'm excited for the redesigns and the rumors. We have a pile of small features that we're going to get to in a minute. This is going to be one of those ones where the keynote is going to focus on the big stuff because Apple is heavily promoting WWDC and its other iPhone and media events to the public. So this is going to be some razzle-dazzle. We're going to get more detail in the press releases afterwards, but where the real detail is going to come is as we get the betas and we as users and developers dive in and find every little nitpicky thing. And that's going to take a few days. So be patient. I feel like we're going to have a lot to report on. And even if the video event itself is focused on the redesign and the very few features, I think there's still going to be a lot here.
Although, of course, no one is going to use beta software on their Macs or iPhones or iPads, are they? No one's going to be that foolish, are we?
How long does it take to install?
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
I think it's going to be at least 8 to 10 minutes before I'm running a beta after the keynote. So it depends on how busy the servers are.
In all seriousness, though, I expect I believe I'm going to have to be writing about it, so I will have to install it somewhere. And thank goodness for that excuse. But even then, I will not put it on my 2 Macs. I will have my production Mac clear for it, just for safety.
I will clearly at least give it 5 minutes to see if anyone's phone catches on fire. But yeah, this is pretty much going on everything. I'm mildly concerned that it might ruin my home because that's usually what happens is the home related stuff and Apple TV, HomePod syncing, lip syncing with the television because I use my HomePods as speakers. A lot of those little bugs creep in. So I might hold back at least on one of the Apple TVs in the house. So we'll see.
Okay.
But let's get into the main crux of today. So Apple has a problem. I remember a couple of years ago, I can't remember which year, but we were having a similar conversation of how is Apple going to walk out on stage and face a crowd of developers when this is going on, right? This was right after the Epic legal battle started. There was all of this challenges to the 30% rate. This is, I think, right before we got the 15% reduction. Anyway, there was all of this talk about how can we have Apple seriously walk out and say, we are here today to celebrate developers. And then all of this going on in the background. And we're kind of back to it again. And this is a very complicated thing because not all developers feel this way. Some people developing for the platform may not even be aware of some of these conversations because they're just making apps and publishing them. But those who are plugged in may have heard about some discontent going on in the developer space. If you follow Steve Stratton-Smith or if you listen to the Accidental Tech podcast, there's a few resources around those, or maybe follow a few developers on Blue Sky or Mastodon. You'll have seen a creep of this discontent. Riley Testut, the developer of Delta, is a very vocal person in this. And I don't know how much you've seen, William, and I know we've discussed it on the show before, but I want to talk about it a little bit more specifically here today because we're about to go to the Worldwide Developers Conference and talk about how Apple has a new dedication to developers, all these new APIs, all of this technology, and they love developers. That's their whole theme of WWDC. They're probably going to have a video at the front of developers doing cute little developer things, and they're going to be like, oh, look at them. They're so cute. They're developers. And they're going to jump into the announcements. how do you feel about all this, and how much have you seen around this particular space?
I've seen a lot less than you. I mean, developers I talk to generally tend to be productivity up people and stuff. I haven't sought out anybody to ask this, but nobody particularly has raised it. I hear the odd thing, but you mentioned Delta there. That's a game emulator, isn't it? Games always seem to be pushing at the edge of whatever Apple allows. So aren't they more likely, edge cases, to be disgruntled?
Well, the App Store economy is complex and it is large, right? Apple, I think a week ago maybe, released a United States focused study, and then as we record today, they released a global version of that study explaining exactly how much financial transaction occurs because of the App Store. This is literally everything. This is grocery shopping, Netflix, Ubers, Amazon. All of this calculation goes in, and the only things they excluded from this study is Apple apps themselves, and for some reason browsers like Google Chrome. Everything else is taken into account, and according to these studies, Apple's App Store contributed to $1.3 trillion of financial exchange around the globe.
Wow. That's more
an
money
incredible
than
number.
I earn in a month.
At least in an hour.
Right. Okay, but there's something in your tone there that's, I don't know, are you suspicious? Do you doubt the figures, or are you thinking there's another problem somewhere?
No, the figure's fine, and this is an independent study done by these two PhD holding people who are very smart, who basically, the study it's 17 pages long, and 5 pages of the study is the methodology, and basically they just get all of this data dumped from Apple, and they go through the data and find a pattern and created their consensus. And basically what they arrived at is that the App Store is a global driver of economy. It doesn't have a strong opinion over what's right or wrong. It just states the facts. And it's a good study. It's definitely clearly meant, the United States one and the global one are meant to be these placeholders, these structures for their arguments in court as they go through regulation proceedings for the EU and DMA, and like clearly that this is what this is for. So take that as you will, but the data I think is accurate. Like, they're not making up these numbers. What's interesting though is it comes off first of all a little defensive, because it is a defense, but there's some interesting information in here. Apple repeated the idea that out of the $1.3 trillion that is part of the global App Store economy, only 10% of it is actually commissionable goods that they can make their money on. Now,
I see. Right.
So 90% of the $1.3 trillion does not contribute to Apple's bottom line at all.
Well, they're missing a trick there then, obviously. But, okay, that's good. I should say, it's not like I doubt Apple's figures in their accuracy. It's just, example, this week I'm very conscious of how Apple, like everybody else, will cherry pick the right figures from the selection. So that's it. But this sounds very well cherry picked then.
Well, the question is that actually a good thing? Or did they accidentally point out one of the significant flaws of the App Store?
Okay.
So look at it this look at it this way. So so you guys have heard me on the show. I'm not exactly the proponent of the developers who are upset, because it is a specific sect, and I'll get into that in a second, that seem to be particularly vocal about this. And I'm also not of the mindset of get over it could be worse. That's dumb. So there is a middle here. And I think part of this is, if you look at it, 10%, there's another way to frame this. 10% of all global transactions are what is paying Apple to maintain the App Store for the other 90%. Why is it their job to monetize Apple's global $1.3 trillion e-commerce platform? And it seems like it's game developers, specific kinds of apps that have in-app purchases or subscriptions. So mental health apps, meditating or sleep tracking. You have these calendar apps, productivity apps, tools like Microsoft 365. Why is it their job to make sure the rest of the global economy is running on the App Store? Because Apple's argument in court has always been their commission pays for maintaining, and it is their compensation for maintaining the App Store and how it is run. So doesn't it seem odd that only 10% of the App Store is actually monetizable? And why is it up to those 10% to give them up to 30% of their entire income to make sure that this is continuing to run smoothly?
The original argument was that the people who paid for the services, who made money for it, were facilitating Apple to be able to host the incredible volumes of free apps that there were.
Sure.
If that has changed so that those free apps are making cash for it, it doesn't take away the cost to Apple of running these things.
Netflix pays Apple $100 a year. That is it.
The developer fee for it. Okay. Right.
That
well, that sounds like a very bad deal for Apple.
Yeah, and then like a game like Clash of Clans, right, with their in-app purchase systems, probably pays up to 30% of everything that they make. Okay,
but this is not a closed system here. The alternative for all of these people is the cost of reaching people at all. I mean, the prime example is going back to box software, where 30% it would be a dream. So if you, I don't dispute Apple charging people 30% for it. I think it's still a bargain in a giant number of cases. But your point that so many people effectively get away with not paying anything, does that mean everybody should get away with it? That would mean Apple's sole benefit from running a global business on the App Store is the fact that it will attract some iPhone buyers.
Happy feelings. Yeah, so that's not my argument. Yes. So yeah, I don't think my actual argument is the opposite. More people should be paying for access. Now, this is the thing, though. If more people pay, they could pay less, right? Apple's 30% technically could be regarded as a flat fee to ensure they're getting the right amount of income. But if more of that $1.3 trillion was able to contribute to the bottom line, then doesn't that mean that the two-person game studio no longer has to pay 15 to 30% of their income? Whereas these other billion-dollar corporations get off scot-free, right? Fortnite is showing that only about 50% of users are using the external fee option. So there's still 50% of income from all Fortnite purchases coming to Apple through a 30% fee. So it gets complicated. And I'm not saying that Apple shouldn't have a monetization platform, and I'm not saying Apple should make money off of your grocery order either. I'm like, the percent off the top cut is probably the problem. There probably could be a commission system in place, but it needs to be much smaller. And I think Apple should recoup their costs in a different way through different kinds of fees, income-based fees, annual fees, things like that. The developer $100 kit is a legacy thing. It's great that it allows low-income access, but there's a sign also, though, William, that might be changing too, because there's now a free developer access option. You can now just have a developer account.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe Apple doesn't charge for people making less than $1 million. And then everyone else over $1 million pays a certain amount, over $10 million pays a certain amount, over $1 billion pays a certain amount. And those flat fees on top of a much smaller commission, I'm talking credit card fees at this point, 1-2%, could balance the books, make the regulators happy, and give developers a win. My argument here is that if regulators are unhappy and developers are unhappy, even as fair and right as the 30% and 15% stuff might be, and I agree that it is actually a pretty good rate. As fair as it is, people are unhappy. And I don't think the beatings are going to stop anytime soon. So why shouldn't Apple step in with all of their money and all their power? And the fact that this services revenue, this is a sliver of services revenue. Most of their services category is paid for by Google. So we're talking about a fraction of their income on a spreadsheet. It's not like it would hurt them to eat some of this. I don't think they should eat it, though. I think they just need to find a better way to monetize the platform and tax the rich, so to speak.
This episode is brought to you by Oracle. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you only get to pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How is it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper, OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better, in test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/AppleInsider. That's oracle.com/AppleInsider. And thanks to Oracle for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. Well, firstly, Google is a problem because that could be going away. But
yes,
Apple has the ability to change what it charges. But if it tried to change, to increase anything in any way, types of fees, then the billion-dollar corporations that are getting away with it, well, it's not like they can go anywhere else, but they're going to continue beating Apple for it. And if one way is unfair, how is it not unfair to suddenly say, you said not groceries, but other services?
Well, think about it. If you're Apple and you say, okay, if you're a billion-dollar corporation, you have to pay us $50,000 a year flat fee. That is couch pennies.
Still a bargain. Good point. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, the two-person company making $100,000 a year can't afford that, but they probably shouldn't be paying Apple anything at that point. Right. So I don't know the math. I can't give you the right numbers. 50,000 might be too much. It might be too little. I couldn't tell you. All I'm saying is, why is Netflix paying $100? And honestly, if Netflix argued, well, we can't publish an app on the App Store, $50,000 is too much, we can't do it. Silly. And I think this is one of those things that if Apple does it, everyone will do it. But this is one of those clever tricks. Apple's the one who created the App Store economy in the first place. We all seem to forget that the reason why microtransactions took off to the degree it did, it's not because of Horse Armor and Skyrim, right? Which is where a lot of people tie in-app purchases to that. I know it's a vague reference, but basically Elder Scrolls, not Skyrim, but Oblivion. Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion had this downloadable content. I think it was $10 you could pay for an aesthetic upgrade to wear horse armor, right? And everyone ties this transaction to, well, that's the beginning of in-app purchase. I don't think so, but it is a good sign. The microtransaction economy was totally built up by Apple's App Store, and then Google cloned it. And here we are today with these megacorps, $1.3 trillion from Apple alone. Imagine what Google is also driving. A significant portion of the global economy. You could almost argue that these are basic utilities. And the fact that they're trying to use the same flat fee that they did at the front, where Steve Jobs or whoever it was walked out on stage and basically said, we need to charge something. We're not looking to be profitable. And then suddenly a couple years later, they're like, we're making billions of dollars and paying developers so much money. It's amazing. It's like, okay, maybe we should walk it back or rethink this. And they never have, because they don't have to. But now regulators are saying, you have to rethink this. So out of everyone in the world doing these things, I get it. Apple is being competitive. Other companies are doing it. It's worse on game consoles. Sony takes like 60% of everything they make. Epic takes like 70% of everything they make. Like, I get it, but Apple could lead the charge here. They have the money. They have the bank. Maybe lose a little bit in the front. Maybe make a few of these billionaire corporations a little upset. Go to court over it. But everyone will agree, hopefully, that it's fair and even if they come out with the right plan.
But apart from that, everything seems fine to you with the trillion. Yeah, okay.
Right. It just feels uneven to me. I'm with you. I'm on the side of it's actually not that bad. I think the vocal minority has points, right? I think Epic is a terrible steward of the vocal minority in this, but I think that there are points to this that should be addressed, like the Netflix problem, the Reader app problem. But outside of that, yeah, it is a good deal. It's just, I think Apple needs some goodwill here because we're talking about going to a developer conference where a good portion of that population is considering not developing for this platform anymore. A lot of them are talking about why bother with Vision Pro, and Apple needs some of that goodwill back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It was halfway through that sentence, I was thinking, well, where else are you going to go? You're going to go to Android? That's not exactly easy, and you're throwing away the market. But Vision Pro not getting supported. I see your point there. I would like to throw in, by the way, that I have paid the 30%. I suppose I technically still am a developer. I had developed one project. I think it made so little money that you could never tell. But I paid that, and it was not the charge that was concerning me at that time. But
It's an interesting thing. I mean, I grew up and saw box software in store shelves. I know that box software sitting in a Best Buy or a Circuit City probably gave by the time the money reached the developer, they got maybe 5% of the sale. I know that that's the world we came from, and that what Apple introduced in the 2010s is a huge bargain. But in the 2010s, when this was introduced, it was not driving a $1.3 trillion economy, right? We're talking country levels of money being moved through a company, right? This is bigger than the GDP of some small countries. So that's why maybe we've heard the term before, Apple tax, and I don't think the commission is a tax, but maybe we should start thinking a little bit about this as kind of a taxing system, right? Because what do taxes do, William? They pay for everyone contributes, and it pays for society to function.
Yeah.
And if the bigger hoarders of cash are the ones who aren't paying, and the lower ends of society are the ones paying more on taxes than the richer ends of society, it becomes imbalanced and becomes a problem. We're seeing the same thing happen across capitalism. Billionaires are hoarding money. They're not paying any taxes because of government loopholes. Not getting political here. It's just the truth. And the same problem seems to be happening to the App Store in a different way because of these loopholes. So close them up, make everyone pay their fair share, and subsidize your income and maybe make a little bit more money in the process. Everyone wins.
This is hard at the same point, but as you said that, I craned in my neck, and at the very top of my bookshelves beside me, I've got something like Adobe Photoshop version 4 in a box, and one of the early Office 2000 maybe in a box next to it, and things like there's a bit of me that misses box software, but only a small bit, I grant you.
So I didn't want to belabor the point too much. I just find the whole thing fascinating, and I feel like it's really important for Apple to find their way here, because as we've seen, the reason why it's on my mind is Apple applied for a stay on the injunction once again in the Epic case, where now they have to allow external linking and no commissions on external purchases. And for every purchase made outside of the App Store, be it Spotify or Epic Games or what have you, they are losing that income. It's a tiny portion of income, but when it's all added together, it's more than any of us make in a day.
Yeah.
Apple, I'm sure, isn't going to hurt from this. They're not going to worry about this. But this is one of those things that they are losing hard in the courts. The United States is showing no sympathy. The EU and the DMA, as I actually agree with, it's being a bit unfair. They're trying to take Apple's prime technologies and hand them out for free. They're taking it way too far. But these regulators are clearly not satisfied with what's going on at Apple right now. And the best way to get government entities to back off is to offer them a boon of some kind. And even if it's not directly what they're asking for, sometimes a big enough push of goodwill can sometimes win you a lot of favors and get a lot of people off your back. So I've been listening to a podcast I'm pretty sure this is right. So if I'm wrong, it's not the end of the world, but it's called Post Games, run by Chris Plant. I believe he was one of the co-founders of Polygon. Polygon recently went through this whole thing. He's no longer there, whatever. But he's great. And in the show, episode 1, he talks about 2 of the greatest video game awards you can win. Game of the Year at the Game Awards and this Independent Gaming Award. And if you win this, you get all of this attention, all of this thing. And for years, if not decades, your game is now going to be worshipped as this award winner, almost like the Oscars of gaming. Apple has been giving out awards for a few years now, and I wonder if this accolade is a little less important. But I bring that up because it's a great podcast, and I recommend everyone go listen to it. If you're listening to this, and if you like gaming, you're probably going to like that one. But Apple Design Awards were announced for WWDC, and their categories are just random feeling almost.
Oh, you mean? Sorry, I always. Why isn't there a best OmniFocus release of the year? It reminds like this, like the Hugo Awards. There's a joke that there's a short story category in the Hugo Awards, just in case Ted Chiang publishes anything in the year. They should do the same for productivity apps. But okay, it's a bit more. Well, I don't remember the categories being insane. Is it?
They're not insane. They're just odd.
Okay, best one-word game title. I don't know.
Well, so like the Game Awards will have like best lead role in a game. You know, they very much mimic the Oscars, whereas Apple has a category called Delight and Fun.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Delight and Fun, but lead in a game. So aren't you as the game player the lead? Is it an award for me?
Well, I'm not doing the voice acting. You know.
Okay, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of narrative-driven games. So,
wait, actors being paid? Writers will get paid next. I mean, then where will we be? Yeah.
Hey, we're getting there as a society, realizing that it takes more than 2 people to make a video game. Writers, I follow some excellent video game writers. They're good people, but. So, Delight and Fun, Best App Capwords, Best Game, of course. The current love child of Apple is Balatro. It's the love child of the whole industry. They won Game of the Year, and oh my gosh, yeah, that's a whole thing. If you don't know what Balatro is,
this is the first time I've heard that word. Balatro.
I've said it on this podcast before. Yeah, it's just
I never listened, but okay, right.
It's like solitaire with gambling or something. It's apparently very addictive. I've actually personally not played it.
Right.
It's supposed to be really fun. It has won every award possible. So of course Apple's giving them some love because, truth be told, Apple getting it for Apple Arcade is a big get. That was one of their actual good games last year. We have an Innovation Award Play and Best Game in that category, PBJ the Musical. That one is actually I believe a Romeo and Juliet.
PBJ, Peanut Butter and Jelly, no?
Uh-huh. It's a Romeo and Juliet, but it's peanut butter and jelly, and you play a handcrafted musical that tells the story.
2 sandwiches, both alike in dignity, and okay.
I think it's the ingredients that are the problem. Uh-huh.
Right. In fair mayonnaise, where we lay our scene. This writes itself. I can see it working. Okay. Right. This episode is brought to you by NordLayer. Now, NordVPN is the leading VPN for personal use, but it comes from the makers of NordLayer, and this is a business-level, network-ready VPN with threat protection and access control that works across all platforms. In minutes, your business can meet security and compliance standards without complex configuration and without new hardware requirements. And that's true whatever size business you have now or whatever size business you scale up to. NordLayer prevents phishing, ransomware, and malware attacks. It lets businesses monitor the health of all its team's devices and user activity and network events. NordLayer spots threats before they can escalate. The company uses dark web monitoring. It handles data breach prevention and breach management. NordLayer is about zero trust network access, granting access only to the right users, and even then, only under the right conditions. Plans start from just $8 per user per month, and there are special rates for teams with over 50 members. But then there's also an exclusive offer for Apple Insider listeners. You can get up to 22% off NordLayer's annual plans, plus another 10% with coupon code AppleInsider10. That's coupon code AppleInsider, one word, all lowercase, -10. Go to nordlayer.com/AppleInsider to save right now. And you can try it risk-free with a 14-day money-back guarantee. Thanks to NordLayer for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. Sorry, do you know, I've totally gone off what you were saying there. Apple gives us an award. Okay.
So for innovation, inclusivity, we have Speechify, an excellent app. Artifana, I follow that developer. That one's a beautiful-looking app. Definitely lots of beautiful birds and animals and stuff like that in there. So there's a lot of award winners and follow-ups. I did have to find it funny that they mentioned Infinity Nikki as a best visual and graphics game. I know that name you're laughing at, but
it reminds me of Kim Possible or something. I mean, a really good children's series name, Infinity Nikki. I was going to say I'd play that, but no, I wouldn't. Okay. I'm just interrupting you now. Ignore me.
You're fine. I bring up this Apple Design Awards because, again, it ties back to the main topic of Apple's out here handing out awards and celebrating these developers and then turning around and saying, now you owe us money for this award. There are some awards you pay for. I know you know this as a member of the Writers Guild.
No, in any case, don't pay for Writers Guild. I need to say that, or
I didn't say no. I didn't mean that.
Stuff, so let's be. I frankly, personally, have lobbied all sorts of organisations to give me an award, and I've offered money, and they've turned me down because look, come on, it'd be so obvious. Yeah. They said, trampling over yet. You're saying yes, awards beget money, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. These are actually very popular apps already. They're going to continue to be money makers. But it brings up the question, so Apple's giving out these awards. We're going to see that cute little developer video at the beginning of WWDC. It's a $1.3 trillion economy. There are clearly disgruntled developers. There are clearly disgruntled judges and regulators. What's going on here? Because Apple's always been an odd company. I mean, you go back to the Steve Jobs days, and if you wrote a negative report about Apple, they'll never speak to you again. And some of that has carried over. We saw with John Gruber, I don't know if you kept up with this, but his talk show this year will not have Apple executives. They've refused him.
And I actually thought they would.
It makes sense.
Forgive me, it feels a little petty, but he did make not only did he criticize Apple Intelligence, but he kind of ignited an argument against Apple Intelligence and where it was going wrong. So it was a big splash he made. And my second thought was Apple's not going to talk to him at this thing. Yep. First thought was, ooh, that's a good point. So, I would have hoped they'd do it, but they didn't. So
we discussed his piece, Something Rotten in Cupertino, when it happened. And I think I wrote a counter piece to it. And I agreed with his premise, if you remember. His points were good. I just still don't fully agree with the idea of, behind an AI, because in order to be behind in something, you have to be competing in the same way. I made someone was pointing out in the our forums that Apple isn't exactly making an LLM right now. Maybe they will. There are rumors of an LLM series, and I know that large language models are what power the back end of Apple Intelligence. That's not what I mean, but there isn't a chatbot you can go talk to, right? There's a lot of these companies and competitors. A lot of what Google showed at I/O are just not what Apple's making, and perhaps they're not even trying to compete in those spaces. So to argue that they're behind simply because they're not in a category can be odd. You know, Apple's also behind in e-scooters, pens, and you know, office equipment because they're not making it, right? Like that, it gets a little odd having that kind of conversation. But John Gruber's point being that how had he not realized that so many Apple Intelligent features just weren't ready because he didn't get to demo them at WWDC? And it brought up a wider conversation of, is Apple's leadership losing the way? Were they chasing this fad and trying to satisfy stockholders by saying, see, look, we have these technologies, by going on stage and showing things that weren't ready? This is part of the greater conversation of developers too, of where they're going out on stage and saying, look how much we love developers. And then they go into court and you see things that suggest that Apple believes developers owe them something. Whereas a lot of developers would argue Apple owes them everything, right? Because what would the iPhone be?
So,
what would the iPhone be without developers?
And where would developer apps be without the iPhone? So
absolutely. That's why I'm saying this is complex. It's why it's hard to listen to certain things. I mean, I'm an ATP listener, and some of their more passionate arguments get lost on me a little bit because I'm like, all right, guys, let's take a step back, because it is true. Apple could do better, but at the same time, I think we forget that we're dealing with this multi-trillion-dollar company, right? And I hate this argument because it's weak, but it's still true. It could be so much worse. It could be so much worse. Apple's actually the least rotten of the bunch, and I don't know if that's a good argument to make, but it's true. And at the very least, they seem to be trying to make all the money in the world while still paying people something. But I digress. I just wanted to have this topic up front because we are going into this conference next week. We're all going to be riding the highs of the new designs and talking about all of that next week. So I figured this would be the best place to discuss it anyway.
I do know developers who are half afraid, half excited about WWDC. Not because of anything you were talking about, but just because there are some years when there are changes that break things they've got, and there are years when there are great new features. So it's going to be a busy summer either way. And an exciting time to be a developer. So there you go. Apple's giving us excitement in a way. And apparently giving us a sneak peek. And I'm going to admit to you, it took me several times of reading sneak peek before I registered that it was sleek and not sneak. Is that not just colorblind of me, basically?
Yeah. I find the whole thing, like, people love anything, teasers, announcements, invites, whatever, and saying this is what it's going to look like. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a transparency Y icon. That's fun. I'm excited for what WWDC is going to hold. Solarium, the code name for the update. It's all going to look like visionOS now, apparently. Who's to say visionOS won't get a redesign on top of it? Now everything looks different. Who knows? We'll see next week. But we do have a few things that has been shared. I think 9to5Mac has gotten hold of some kind of code base, or they have a friend on the inside. But whatever it is, they're sharing a few leaks ahead of time. So I want to go through this list quickly, and then I want you to tell me what you think. So 5 new features. iMessage, getting a polls app. Okay. I mean, you can already do that with third-party polls apps, but I guess this one's going to be built in, and then you can have AI autofill in the poll options based on the conversation you've had. Messages is also apparently going to get automatic translation feature. So if someone sends you a message that is not in your device language, it will automatically get translated.
So hang on. So if I type murd again, they're going to see what I mean. Okay, I'll watch my language. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
It would be funny if it translates something incorrectly because you misspell something.
Yes.
Apple Music is going to get full screen album art for the lock screen. This already actually happens if you're in the Apple Music app and go to the Now Playing function. I guess that's just going to move to the lock screen. So that could be cool looking. It's going to animate. It currently does not animate on the lock screen, so they're just playing with that a little bit. That'll be interesting. Apple Notes. This is. I'll save that one for last because I think that's one we're going to discuss more. CarPlay is going to get a visionOS UI. Sure, that's obvious. Everything else looks like it. Why not CarPlay? But Apple Notes. They're going to get the ability to export notes in Markdown.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people still use Markdown. It's very popular for bloggers, people who write for the web. It's not that Notes is getting Markdown support necessarily. I don't think that's what it means. What it means is because what Apple Notes is a what's the word for it? It's a word processor or rich text. Yes, it's a rich text document. Yeah. So, and then you can export it as a PDF currently, I think. There's really no actual options here. I don't even think you can export it in plain text. You do that by copying and pasting, which is silly.
Yes.
But you can now, hopefully, hit the export button or share button, and it will get shared as Markdown text. So, neat.
So, I happen to not be a Markdown fan because it's supposed to make it easy for you to write on the web, but I already knew how to write on the web enough, and some of the features it gives actually interfere with what I try to write on the web. The thing of square brackets around clarifying comments in quotes, for example, that just launches all sorts of external. It just great if you don't need that. Worthless to me because I do. So great that it's for people who like it, and I will never think to try it, but. That's just me.
A lot of people don't realize that they know Markdown already. If you've ever typed in a forum and you wanted to put italics around a word and you wrote asterisks around the word and then hit enter and then it showed up as italics, that's Markdown. You've used it. It's in a lot of places. Invented by John Gruber in like 2006. It's still alive today. Cool. I don't necessarily use it because I write in HTML. I just pop out the HTML that I need as I write. It would confuse me to no end to try to go back because I know a lot of Markdown. I don't know all of the technical bits, but I just like writing it as is. I like seeing the HTML and then plugging it in later into a WYSIWYG editor or whatever. But I just wanted to point out I'm reading a book where the author wrote the entire thing in Apple Notes.
Wow. Okay. I suppose I can see that. It doesn't seem like the obvious choice, especially not when every single Apple device that has Apple Notes also has Apple Pages on. Mm-hmm. And I know novelists who use Pages, but...
Well, he did this. He said he wrote it in Apple Notes because it's end encrypted. So because he was covering and gathering a lot of sensitive information.
Goodness, I would never have thought of that. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, wow. This is the book Apple in China by Patrick McGee.
Oh, I see. Right, I've been hearing about that. Oh.
Yes, it is. It is quite good. It's filling in a lot of blanks in Apple history that others have not been able to find. Like so go listen. He actually gets interviewed on the talk show with John Gruber. He's even been on Jon Stewart's Daily Show, right? So promoting the book and everything, and it's got a lot of good stuff in there. A lot of like Steve Jobs returning to Apple, what's going on with all these executives, how money stuff, how Apple shifted to China, that supply chain stuff. By 2012, Apple owned more technology in China than they spent on infrastructure in the United States. All those little tidbits are in there. It's really interesting. But I definitely say everyone should go check it out if you're an Apple fan. This is not one of those biographical Steve Jobs books that gets a lot of weird things, like where they're trying to have a big opinion. This book has an opinion for sure, but I don't think it's necessarily a poor one. Apple's reliance on China is a heavily known thing. One of the stories that he tells on the talk show that is in the book is... He actually, he believes that he's the first one to uncover this China scare in the early 2010s when China put out on, I forget what it's called, Commerce Day. They put out this news that Apple is terrible and they're not giving equal share to Chinese users because they're something to do with the repairs. They're refusing repairs on devices. He found the reasoning behind all of this and what happened there and how Apple reacted and just like a lot of background information that we just didn't originally have. Because there's this big China scare in the early 2010s where it was like Apple's built up a lot of infrastructure here and they're starting to lose trust in the company and the government is publicly attacking them. What are they going to do? And there was a lot of conversation around that, and he kind of uncovered some of that mystery. So just a lot of interesting tidbits there. I'm not done with the book, but I definitely so far have enjoyed it. So yeah, Apple in China, go give it a look. At the very least, if you aren't interested because I botched that description, you'll get much more information if you go listen to the talk show episode. It's actually a pretty good one. Yeah, so visionOS, I wanted to end on. I wrote a little... I was asked, hey, can you find all the rumors about visionOS 26 or 3 and put those together? There's nothing, William. There's just nothing here. So I actually made the story focused around what we did know, and that is that visionOS is probably going to be a gaming-heavy update. All signs point to visionOS getting access to PSVR 2 controllers. Apple's calling it spatial controllers.
Of course they would. Can I just point out, maybe I'm just pitching this or projecting something, but you sound less interested than normal. Is it because Apple Vision Pro, that's old hat. You've got a Switch. Is it Switch 2, the sequel? That's the thing now. So tough, Apple, you're too late. Or am I just totally wrong there?
The problem is Switch 2's better at gaming than Vision Pro. I mean, it's neat that I can plug in a controller and play an emulator, or several iPad games. There's some VR games in Vision Pro worth mentioning. Like I enjoyed Job Simulator. There's a couple of rhythm games in there that I've... Job
Simulator? Mm-hmm. So what, you have to sit at your desk for 8 hours doing... Okay, sorry. All right, I didn't get that.
Yeah. Yeah, yes. You have to like serve your robot overlords and work at the computer, and it's really funny. Go watch a short video of it on YouTube; you'll enjoy it. They have What If, right? They have Thrasher. There's a lot of really good games on here. They're just not. It's not in abundance, and they're all relying heavily on your hand controls and hand tracking. VR controllers is going to be a game changer because the physicality of holding the controller, the instantaneous and knowing that it's going to work every time of clicking a button, it's needed for games. And hopefully this means it opens up new things like Beat Saber. That's the one I want to visionOS. So hopefully we find out that PSVR 2 controller support and other third-party controller support is coming. And I believe this, along with the Apple Games app announcement that we discussed last week, Apple's purchasing of a game studio. Hopefully this all is continued emphasis on the fact that WWDC might be a game-heavy conference, which is fun for me.
I mean, I wouldn't begrudge you that, and I know Apple keeps pushing away with games, and it's great, but that is always the one bit of WWDC where I kind of glaze over.
Oh yeah, I don't want demos. Yeah, please don't halt everything for us to watch someone play NBA 2K26. Like, don't do that.
I thought it was just me. Okay, yes.
Yeah, those are always very terrible. Now, announce titles. Put up a little bento of all the games coming to visionOS. Like, put Resident Evil 8 VR on visionOS. Like, sure, make those kinds of announcements, but keep moving. Don't stop and play the game for us. I'm excited. I know we spent the whole show talking about WWDC and developers. I think sadly it was me talking most of that time. Sorry, William. But
you always do this. You tell me something because I ask you, and then you say you should. I don't know. This is the time of year when it seems like this is the tentpole topic. Everything around apps, everything around the App Store, and I think I am actually more excited this year than ever for WWDC. And I don't know why particularly. I mean, there's always good stuff, but it just feels like this year, unless it turns out to be light and it's 20 minutes, like you say, then this could be a really, really good WWDC. And I'm excited to very carefully use the betas responsibly on non-production material Macs, okay? Honestly, really.
I'm excited. Next week's going to be fun. I'm definitely going to install all the betas, and William's probably going to accidentally install a couple.
Yeah, it's happened before. Yeah.
As much as maybe it sounded like we were down, I want to emphasize, just because we're discussing Apple critically doesn't mean we're particularly against them. I mean, I'm still going to use their products. I'm still going to install these betas. I'm going to tune in and enjoy every minute of that keynote and watch it 3 more times to get all the information from it.
Yes.
But
yes,
it's going to be a good week next week. I hope that the listeners enjoyed this particular episode. If you're a developer and want to reach out, let us know what you think of this whole situation. Feel free. I'm always happy to hear from you. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm available via email, wes@appleinsider.com. You can also find me on Mastodon. If you want, you can share a Apple Notes link into Encrypted with all of your... I'm just joking. But, William, where can people find you?
Usually at this point, I'd point you at YouTube and my 58 Keys channel, but this time I'm actually going to be right here with an extra Apple Insider podcast episode. I was going to say later on Monday night. Later on Monday night for me. Here in the UK, the keynote's on at 6 p.m. So it'll be sometime in the evening when there'll be a short roundup. So if you want a quick way to find out what happened and what was worth paying attention to, hopefully I'll have that for you within a little while after the keynote finishes. However long that keynote turns out to be. 4
hours long. Could you imagine Apple just continuing to go for 4, like people just start passing out in the audience? So if you guys enjoy the show, you're always welcome to leave podcast reviews on Apple Podcasts. We got another excellent review this week, 5 stars from Blee11. Oh. They've been listening to our show for a long time. It's evolved into a reliable source of common sense information about Apple products and services. I wonder what it was before it evolved.
Well, I'm thinking we should stop that immediately. No, we don't want that. Sorry, Blee11. Thank you very much, Blee11. That was very nice.
Yeah. We're a good team, provide useful insights, entertaining way, and they they look forward to their weekly update. Keep up the good work. So thank you for that review. And once again, guys, you can always leave a review on Apple Podcasts. They're looking great lately. If you scroll through them, it's pretty much all 5 stars all the way across, and we're always happy to hear that you are enjoying the show. So continue to leave those great reviews, and we will happily read them on the show. And I would like to thank our sponsors once again, Oracle and NordLayer. And if you're an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, you're going to be hearing about iOS and iPadOS 26 wish lists. You can become a paid subscriber through our Patreon. You can find all that information in our show notes. Also, Apple has the premium feature. You can subscribe via Apple Podcasts. So if you haven't already done that, maybe this is the week you give it a try. I believe Apple Podcasts even gives you a free trial for a week. So you can go back and listen to a few episodes. It's all in there. At least listen to the free bonus portions of the episodes, I mean. But thanks once again for listening. And William, I'll talk to you in a minute. And for everyone else, I'll talk to you next week.